Hello, welcome to the Freedom from Anger podcast. Joined here today with Dustin Salsi in California, and he's talk about his experience with martial arts, and we're going to kind of dive into how such things as martial arts could be used for anger management, stress, anxiety, and we'll just kind of go from there. So here is Dustin. He is also the Formless Podcast host, so please check him out. All right. So, Dustin, nice to talk to
Hello,
you
sir.
today.
I started martial arts when I was 12 years old. I did it for a little less than a year. My dad lost his job. The place he worked at for 20 years closed down. We had to move away. And in that time, money got tight. So didn't really get to practice again. Then fast forward 20 so years later, I got married, had kids. We were talking about getting them involved in something. And I said, man, I'd really love to get my kids involved in martial arts. I happened to fall upon a really good teacher when I was a kid and really changed the outlook on my life. I was looking for an excuse to get back in. And so convincing my wife to get our kids in was kind of a gateway for me to get back into it. And it was the best thing I ever did. I got my black belt October of last year, something I've wanted to do since I saw Enter the Dragon on TV when I was, probably 6 or 7 years old. And that was it. And I haven't stopped since. So yeah, that spawned the podcast. I teach martial arts. I was doing it like 3 times a week. Now I'm doing it once a week because of my new job. But yeah, I love it. If I could find a way to do it more, I would.
So, as a child, like what drew you to martial arts besides the awesome movie?
Yeah. So 2 things really. My parents had a friend growing up that had lost his arm in a scuba diving accident. And he didn't let that hold him back. He was a black belt he's passed away since, and I don't know what style martial arts he trained, but he was a black belt. He ran triathlons. He did all sorts of stuff and he had one arm. And in one of my episodes, I talk about him a little bit. One of the episodes of my podcast, he came over to our house one day and me and my little brother were playing Nintendo and he wanted to play with us. And my little brother, who was all of about 6 at the time, looked at him and was like, "You can't do this. You have one arm." And then he's like, "Scoot over, kid." And he sat down and proceeded to learn how to do it with one hand, work the controller with one hand, in about 10 minutes was beating us soundly. So that kind of thing is lust for life, trying new things, doing new things was real inspiring to me. And the other thing that got me into it was as a kid, I was kind of scrawny and picked on a little bit and I was real sensitive and it just gave me a solid foundation to stand on and it gave me some self-worth. And so when I did stuff, when I was training, I felt good. And so that's when I got out of it, I missed it terribly. And I wasn't quite mature enough to understand why and what I was missing out of that. But as an adult, I can look back and see like, oh, you needed that. You should have found a way to get back into it. But it happens.
When we try to teach classes, we talk about resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Being resilient. And when you talk about your friend that had one arm, he did not let that hold him back.
Absolutely.
Resiliency is fortunately kind of a dying mentality.
And I think that's in everybody. Everybody has resilience and it's just a matter of finding it's, whether you are recovering from an illness or an addiction or just trying to get out of bed in the morning. There's no matter what you're working on, there's always going to be setback. There's always going to be something that makes you ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? And you have to be honest with yourself. Do I want to pursue this? Do I want to recover from this? Do I want to get over that hump? You know, and sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer, but for the most part, anything worth doing, you're going to look at those obstacles as being like, well, I just got to get through this. If it's recovery, if it's exercise, if it's whatever that case may be, if it's worth it, you'll find a way to work around or over that issue. At least for me, it is that way. It wasn't always that way.
Yeah. And what we try to teach people is that if it's easy, then you might want to double check, because you're going to have those adversities. You have to be able to plow through the hard times, because, it's life, ups and downs.
Yeah. And anything that is good for you, I wish it wasn't, but anything that is good for you, not easy to do. Whether you're trying to eat healthier or trying to exercise or just have that positive mental attitude, some of that stuff, it's a task. It's hard work, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's easy to go for breakfast, just eat a donut, or, just go get garbage. It takes effort to make a healthy meal. It takes effort to exercise, but all of those things are worth it, and you will feel better about it if you can make that first step. And that's a hard thing. That's tough.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote. I can't think of the person who said it, but if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy. It's easy to go to the drive-through and get a Big Mac.
Yeah. But the thing is like, even if you screw up, as long as you realize that you screwed it up, you can fix that. You can fix that. And that's like, I could easily beat myself up for going through the drive-through today and get down on myself about that. But I realize, okay, I made a conscious decision to do that. And will I do it tomorrow? No. But I'm going to have to make the conscious effort not to do that tomorrow. I'm going to have to pack my lunch before I go to work. This morning just went out the window, so it didn't happen. But you plan ahead and you can kind of overcome some of those pitfalls, if you will.
Yeah. And I think ingrained in this is we like structure. That structure of, hey, I'm going to make my meal, I'm going to do this. It's not easy, but once we actually do, whether it's working out or making the time to practice martial arts, we have the time. It's just we kind of choose not to make that time.
Well, they're habits. And habits take, I don't know, you being a counselor, you might have a different opinion or a different thought on this, but habits, whether they're good habits or bad habits, they take time. And nobody starts out a pack-a-day smoker. That builds up over time. You don't start out running marathon. You have to work up to that. You have to work up to a pack a day. You have to work up to a marathon. It's just, where are you putting that energy into? And I firmly believe we got one ticket on this ride. And when that ticket gets punched, that's it. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if you get reincarnated. I don't know if you go to heaven or hell. I don't know. And I'm not worried about that right now. I know that I got one ticket, and my outlook now is I want to make that ticket worth it and do what I can. And so when I do slip and go through the drive-through or whatever the case may be, I think about that. Like, okay, you got, how many more times are you going to do that? I'm 43. If I'm lucky, I'll make it to 75 or 80, provided I don't get hit by a bus or die in a plane crash or something stupid. How many more times, how many more days do I got? How much more time can I make the best of what I got now? And that's what I'm trying.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's kind of reminds me of, remember the movie, What About Bob?
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorites.
Yes. Those baby steps. Baby steps.
And it's so true. If you just focus on getting 1% better every day over the course of a year, how much is that? That's quite an improvement in 1 year. If you think about it, if you get better 1% every day, that's 365%. If my math's right, nobody gets that, The stock market if you could get that in the stock market, we'd all be Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or whatever rich person you want to be. 1% better. And that's hard to do if you think about it. But that's an attainable goal for people, I think. Sometimes you can only do half of that. Sometimes it's easy, but if you go for it like that every day, I think you'll have more progress than not.
Yeah. It reminds me of Dr. Dyer. He talked about his struggles with addiction. And he said that looking at it from the scope of, hey, I got to be sober for 5 years, he couldn't comprehend it. But he broke it down to, okay, I'm going to be sober today. The next day, he was able to maintain his sobriety. And I think there's a lot to be said with that, because take it day at a time, because we're not promised 5 years from now. We're not promised 20 years from now. So it's those little incremental changes that we can make. And the question I love to ask our clients is, hey, what are you going to do today that's going to better you?
Yeah.
And it could be anything, like read a chapter in a book. It could be anything. It's like, what are you going to do today to better yourself? And then kind of build from that.
Yeah. When we're teaching, or when I'm teaching, martial arts typically has belts. You get a belt and then you start working on the next thing. And especially with some of the younger people that we work with, you give them the information and their eyes just kind of glaze over. It's like, it's too much. And I always say, focus on one thing, make one thing as good as you can make it, and then work on the next thing. My favorite thing to tell little guys is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. With any type of program, you can't take the whole thing and be done all at once. There's just too much involved. And if you can get one thing at a time, every session, every training course, just take one piece of that, make it as best you can, and then move on to the next thing. Pretty soon, you'll be 3-4 weeks into it, and it won't look half as big as it was. But I think as human beings, we tend to look at the big picture and get overwhelmed. And the key to that, I think, is being able to look at the macro and the micro version and deciphering between the two.
Yeah. Also reminds me of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the self-help book called The 4 Agreements.
No, never heard of it.
It is an amazing book that I definitely try to get out there. But one of the 4 agreements, talking about agreements that you make with yourself. And the last one is, I'll do your best. And he makes a point to say your best is going to change from day to day. So your best tomorrow, if you're sick or the weather, it's going to change. And the example that I always like to use is, I was in the Marines, I was in the military, and I was in great shape. So if I try to compare myself now to the way I used to be, then running 5-6 miles at a time, I probably couldn't run to the end of the driveway without getting out of breath. But doesn't mean I can't build on that. So maybe in the driveway, quarter mile. So it's definitely having that mentality to, okay, I'm going to do my best today and just kind of leave everything else aside.
Yeah. Well, my 2 favorite quotes right now, discipline equals freedom. And when I first heard that, it pissed me off. It just irritated the crap out of me. But it's the God's honest truth. If you discipline yourself, you will be free to do the things you want to do. And the other one is, attitude is everything. And that, I think, is my quote. I don't know. I don't know where I heard it before, but I use it and I claim it as mine. If you have a crappy attitude about whatever it is you're trying to do, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to succeed. If you have a good attitude, even if it's crap work, even if it sucks, have a good attitude about it. Force yourself, find a way to make your attitude good, and it'll be that much better, because the alternative sucks.
Yeah, that's an old positive self-talk. It's how we talk to ourselves in our minds. And unfortunately, we have this negative bias. It's always negative, negative, negative. Hey, it's like flipping a coin. It's 50-50. I'll take those odds in Vegas any day. It can either be good, it can be bad. And it doesn't cost anymore to think good as it does to think bad. So why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you have a bad attitude, you're going to have a bad day. Everything's going to suck. I think a lot of it is garbage in, garbage out. And if you're putting in garbage, you're going to get out garbage. I avoid the news. It is a black hole of garbage. I mean, I do watch it, but I have to be careful. Twitter's a perfect example. It's negative, negative, negative. And if you fall down that rabbit hole, that's all you get. I personally have to be really careful with that because I find it affects everything as far as like my mental health is concerned. I had a job when I first started. It was a small business and there was about 5 of us that worked there. We all sat together at lunch and we watched the news. And I won't say what news channel it was, but it was nationwide. It was huge at the time and they've screwed some stuff up and have kind of slipped, but we watch it every day at lunch. And I found myself getting more and more negative, more and more depressed, and I couldn't understand why. And out of the blue, somebody suggested one day we watch something else, anything else other than the news. And they were showing, it happened to do with some oil spill in the Gulf. It went on for like a month. They were just covering it on this hour that we would watch. And man, I had the best day at work. We changed the channel and watched some other mindless garbage. I don't remember what it was, but my whole outlook lit. And I remember sitting down with my boss and being like, I don't care what we watch. I don't care. We watch anything you want, but I cannot watch this news anymore because I'm going to lose my mind. Whatever you want to watch, you pick. I don't care, but I cannot do the news anymore. And after that, it was golden. But man, but just that 1 hour a day of constant doom and gloom was detrimental.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not a news watcher. I always felt that if I don't feel bad about something, then I can definitely find a reason. But
Yeah.
it's all negative, negative, negative. And then you get kind of sucked into it. And I remember I was listening to news on the radio and I was almost in
Yeah.
tears. I was just so depressed and just anxiety ridden. I'm like, why am I listening to this? And so I'm making the point that if I'm in my car, I'm listening to a podcast, it's comedians, it's something because in the grand scheme of things, what somebody's doing thousands of miles away really not impacting my daily life. So try to focus on being present in the here and the now.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. It's one thing to be informed. And I think that was the main idea about the news to begin with, was to inform you. But this 24-hour news cycle that we're in now, where everything's a major story and every tragedy is headline, that really messes with people, at least in my experience. And yeah, that's my advice to anybody who's depressed or anxious. Turn off the news, at least, or set a timer and stick to it. You know, give yourself 5-10 minutes, get the main story, and then find something else to do.
Yeah. I remember back when I used to watch the news quite a bit, I'd roll out of bed, turn on the news, and within 10 minutes, somebody else lost their life over nothing. I would start my day off being just wrecked. And then here I am having to go out and try to talk to people and, get them out of their funk or whatever. And
And you're already,
yeah. But I got to the point where I would turn it on, I'd watch the traffic. After that, turn it off.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. We're coming upon a political mess. I always tell people, whether what side you're on, they don't care about you. They just want to be elected.
Yeah.
So don't get caught up in that.
I try not to get too opinionated, but it always seems to me that the people that we should elect don't want to have anything to do with politics. And the people that shouldn't be elected or allowed anywhere near that are always the first people to stand up and say, vote for me.
Yeah. I like that power, that recognition. And I'm sorry, but my own personal opinion is if you've been in Congress for 60 years, what the hell do you know about the everyday American? Not a dang
Well,
thing.
yeah.
Term limits.
The other thing, I'm not voting for anybody anymore that has not had a real job. If you haven't worked at a job where you had to punch in and punch out and listen to somebody tell you what to do at least once in your life, I don't think that you should qualify for any office.
It's always amazing the amount of money that's spent to get into office for a job that does not pay that much. I'll
Yeah.
spend $3 million to get elected for a job making 150 grand. To me, that does not add up. It does not compute.
Yeah. Yeah. So your podcast, you guys help people through anxiety, depression, that sort of thing from what I've heard.
Yeah. Like I said, we don't have a lot of episodes out there, but what we try to do is just try to get information out there on how to cope and deal with things. It would be nice if we had more listeners. I'm always open to suggestions for topics. Got a lot of information about various things. Company it's behavioral health education,
Yes.
anger management, stress management, relationship education, kind of a little bit of everything. Typically, our clientele are usually people that are court ordered to take programs. We do have those rare individuals that are trying to better themselves, that take it upon themselves to seek out guidance. Been around since 2020, since COVID and stuff happened. It's slowly growing, but we felt that with the podcast, get some information out there, get people kind of thinking about things, and hopefully we do more episodes. It's kind of hard with life schedules and stuff, but
Oh yeah. And work and everything else, family life. Yeah.
yeah.
You know, so I talked a little bit about growing up and being a scrawny kid and kind of getting picked on and stuff like that. Having dealt with all of that and then doing martial arts, in my opinion, when you voluntarily go and get punched in the mouth or kicked or strangled, it kind of turns the volume down on all that other stuff, all that other noise that's out in the world. And that's what has kept me coming back. I would tend to get angry, fly off the handle, yell at my kids, yell at people in traffic, just like everybody else. The most peaceful drives I have home are out of the train. Somebody wants to cut me off. It's like, go ahead, come right over. Go ahead. I'll let you in. I have more peace after the 20 minutes, half hour after class than I have all week everywhere else. Dealing with work, dealing with quote unquote ornery customers, that kind of stuff. It's small potatoes. That has been the one thing that I have found that helps me through. I was, as a kid, prescribed different medications for depression, anxiety, and things like that. And in my experience, just kind of like throwing a blanket over the dirt or a rug over the dirt instead of taking care of the problem. And this is more like a vacuum cleaner. It just kind of cleans that stuff up. It definitely was life-changing for me, and to the point where I recommend it for everyone. And I don't care what kind of martial arts it is. I think everyone should do something. Our bodies are made to be in motion. Whether you jog, swim, play tennis, play catch in the yard, you should do some sort of physical activity. I prefer martial arts. I think that's the most fun thing to do. But I think that you should try and do something hard and struggle with it, because life is struggle, my friend.
Yep. I cannot agree with you more. I think we need that struggle. If we don't have that struggle, we tend to kind of try to make up struggles.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. You're going to struggle. You might as well try and do something that you enjoy.
So do you think it's the physical aspect of training, or is it the psychological aspect of training that gets you into that kind of good space, or a combination of both?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a little bit of both. The physical aspect of it, for one, you can't really think about anything else if somebody's trying to punch you in the face. Okay. If you're thinking about what you need to make for dinner or what report you got to turn in, you're not going to have a good time. You have to be 100% focused on what you're doing because you're going to get hurt or someone else is going to get hurt. At least where I train. That might be somewhere, it might be a different story for you somewhere else, but accidents are going to happen. And if you don't know how to be a good partner, you're going to learn how to be a good partner. A lot of the training that we do is with somebody else. We do get bags and stuff, but for the most part, we're training on a live human being and they're training on us. So you got to be in that moment and working on that with someone. The other aspect of it, the mental aspect of it, yeah, you're just, for me at least, that's all you can think about right now. That other stuff, it kind of just, you push the pause button on that other stuff. And I've walked into that building completely stressed out, completely worried about hundreds of other things, problems at work or problems at home. And it allows me to kind of put that aside for 45 minutes to an hour and come back at it with a whole new fresh outlook. And I've had, it doesn't fix, it just takes the edge off of a little bit. And a lot of times I come back to those life problems and they're not as bad, or there's a different option. There's something else there that I wasn't able to think about before because it was right in front of me and it was so looming. And after training, you come back to it and it's like, oh, that's not so bad. That's something I can deal with. Or I didn't think of it this way before, and now I can kind of take a bite out of it or settle that problem with a better attitude, with a renewed vigor. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember when I was in the Marines, they teach you kind of a mixed martial arts type stuff. And I remember I was deployed to actually California. And one of my sergeants that was with us, he was a black belt instructor. And he said, hey, come to the gym. We'll work towards your next belt. Compared to me, he was a very small guy. He threw my ass all over the place and just beat the heck out of it. I was like, the heck with this. But since then, various jobs I've had to do some martial arts, some physical stuff, and I've really enjoyed it. But then I get in my head and I'm kind of like, well, which discipline do I need to study? Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it Krav Maga or this?
Yeah.
And then I just kind of talked myself out of it. But it's definitely an area that I would enjoy getting back into because I do like the physical aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. My answer to you is all of them or any of them. But it's such a great humbler. It will make you lose your ego. I think as men, we have the sense of, I don't know what's the right word for it, but this sense of, I got to be a tough guy. And I am not a tough guy. I train martial arts, but I am definitely not a tough guy. And I've never considered myself to be a badass, but it allows me to not have to prove myself to the tough guys. It's not worth it, for one, but for two, it's silly. Because if you've ever seen a boxing match or seen somebody fight in the street, all it takes is one shot and somebody could be laying on the ground. Somebody could be hurt. And it doesn't matter if that person is skilled or not. If they get that one shot, outcomes change and they can change in an instant. So I don't have to prove myself to anybody. So if somebody is looking to beat me up, what can I do for you, sir? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I want you to have a good day. I want to have a good day. And I don't want to involve police officers or bystanders with cell phones. So what could we do to avoid that? I've been thumped up by the smaller person. You were talking about your instructor who was a much smaller person who thrashed you around. If you train martial arts long enough, you'll get beat up by smaller people. You'll get beat up by bigger people. You'll get beat up by people you didn't think you could get beat up by, and vice versa.
Yeah, it was definitely a humbling experience because I was young,
It,
muscled up, just, oh, I'm going to show you
oh
how it's
yeah,
done. And he just mopped the floor with me. Like,
ragdoll you. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
wish I would have taken the time to, deflate the ego and actually learn from him because he's a very knowledgeable guy. I had another instructor years later, and one of the main things that he taught us is it's not like the movies. You do what you got to do to get out of the situation. He said, but why do people always want to go to the top? He's all about going for the legs, lower body stuff. Hey, you want to sit up here and do this? He's like, take the legs out. Then you have control.
Yeah, to stand in front of somebody and let them punch you while you're trying to punch them, that's the recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Because like you said,
Yeah.
all it takes is one good
Shot, and yeah, and who knows if that person's got a friend standing around like waiting for his free shot, so to speak. That's just asking for trouble or an emergency room visit.
Okay, definitely. All right. Well, just kind of to wrap things up here. So, would you suggest somebody's struggling with personal problems, whether it be anger, stress, anxiety? Would you suggest martial arts as a outlet, so to speak?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's helped me with my own anxiety and frustrations. It is the one thing that I have found that allows me to turn the volume down on that stuff. And I couldn't recommend it more for everyone. There's so many benefits to it. Physically, mentally, emotionally, you can't ask for a better recipe to improve your life. Martial arts becomes a vehicle for you to experience life in if you do it. And it's healthy, it's fun, and what else are you going to do? If you're trying to improve yourself, it is definitely one of the things that you can do to improve yourself. Dealing with conflict, dealing with anxiety issues, just improving those things and getting better and finding yourself working towards a goal. I don't see a negative to that personally. And I don't see how anyone could actually.
Well, I would definitely agree with you there. So, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Dustin Salsi from the Formless Podcast was his recommendation. If you're trying to better yourself, martial arts might be a vehicle to better your life. And with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. Please check out Dustin's podcast. Thank you so much, Dustin.
Hey, thanks for having me. Anytime, if you want to talk, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to sit down with you.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed. I could probably talk for hours about martial arts and how I need to get my ass in there. All right, now that wraps up our guest, Dustin Salsi. Thank you for listening. I hope you got something from this episode, and hopefully we'll have a lot more guests and topics to talk about. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover, please contact me. You can go to our website, freedomanger.com. Go to contacts. It's got my email. It's got ways for you to text me, however you feel comfortable. And if you're in need of some behavioral health education, hopefully you go to our website and check us out. Till next time.